to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Goins here with the one and only Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, how are you?
I am great, Zach. Thank you for having me as your co-host yet again.
What an honor.
What an honor.
Truly.
I did a little bow behind the microphone when you introduced me.
What does it feel like now, knowing that you've got one episode under your belt as a co-host? Are you more comfortable heading into this one? You feel like you're in the swing
for
of
sure.
things?
I mean, definitely just getting back in the swing of things and feeling it out. And then, of course, just knowing, hopefully we have more and more people joining us every week, moving forward. And, it's exciting
You're
to
bringing in the
welcome
Dune
people
Hive.
in. So,
Yeah,
Dune
bring
Hive. Dune Hive.
You're the leader.
Long
You're
live
like
the fighters.
You're blowing the conch shell to assemble the Dune Hive. We've got
That's
a
right.
pretty solid episode here today. It's going to be a divisive episode, maybe. We've got, of course,
Ruh-roh.
our news. Is that a reference to your Scoob ranking above the old guard?
Is that? Yeah, maybe.
So
Hey,
we've got
you haven't
news.
even seen. Wait,
Go
wait,
ahead.
what movie was that you were talking about Scoob being above?
You put Scoob ahead of the old guard.
Yes,
on
that's
your
right.
ranking of all 16
That's
movies that
right,
you've
that's
seen this
right.
year.
Hey,
It was devastating.
I'm sorry.
Also, I didn't acknowledge it in the tweet, but I had a little issue with you putting Invisible Man down so low, but I know you didn't like it. We don't have to
that
get
movie.
into it.
Yeah, we won't. Trust me.
So, back to today's episode. We've got our news, as usual, going to hit on some biggest stuff from the past week. And then we're doing a double review today. We've got I'm Thinking of Ending Things, the latest Netflix original from Charlie Kaufman, which is a very split decision here between the two of us. Two very different interpretations. And then we've got Mulan, the latest live-action Disney reboot that came out on Disney Plus over the weekend. I am the only one who has seen this, so it's going to be almost as if Johnny's conducting an interview with me. So it's not just me rambling on and on for 30 minutes without giving Johnny a chance to chip in. So we're going to try and make that as much of a discussion as possible. But with that being said, two reviews, we are not doing any sort of ranking or draft or anything like that, since we want to be able to dive into both these movies. But
Yes, sir.
with that being said, before we get into anything specific, what's going on with you, Johnny? I know you have it's like Christmas. This is the week before Christmas
man.
for you.
This is better than Christmas. This is better than Christmas because years of waiting to see Dune. Obviously Dune is not coming out this week, and I've already seen a little bit of footage because I've seen the teaser in theaters. But man, to finally know that I've been waiting so long, been hyping it up, had so much faith in this movie, and I really do think on Wednesday when this thing drops at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the U.S. that people's minds are going to be blown. My mind's going to be blown all over again because we're getting supposedly 3 minutes of footage.
Right, that's huge. That is a long trailer.
That's a ton, and that's definitely. I think it makes sense because it has been such a long wait, and we're so close to when it's supposed to be coming out that you kind of have to over deliver, for the fans and people who have been kind of anticipating it. You can't just drop, a minute and a half or 2 minutes. You got to give them the full thing. And so I'm definitely very, very excited. I know a lot of people on Twitter have been talking about it, and it's a really, really exciting time. And then of course, the next couple of days, tomorrow's Labor Day here in the US. And then on Tuesday, hopefully maybe we'll even get something a little bit early, like a poster or something, kind of announcing that the trailer's coming Wednesday. But I couldn't be more excited. I know we're gonna have a ton of coverage here between you and I, and things gonna be on the website and things on the YouTube channel. So everyone,
we're still 27 followers away, sir. So I know we're just itching to get that YouTube reaction video out there.
People
but
gotta
if you're
deliver.
if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't followed us on Twitter for some reason, go do that so we can get that 900 followers, baby.
900, baby, the big round 900. I got a hard time believing that anyone listening to this podcast does not at least follow us on Twitter.
Right. I feel like they don't get to the podcast. I feel like the Twitter is the entry point. So
that's like the base level of,
unless we just have some
fandom.
random like podcast subscribers that saw us browsing Apple Podcasts or Spotify or something.
They're like, oh, we are desperate to hear some guys talk about film. So let's hit it up.
Yeah. So that's obviously, I think we are not sure what's going to be on the schedule for next week's episode because there's still, I think, The Devil All the Time on Netflix comes out midweek. So we'll already have recorded by then. And then Antebellum, we will have seen it, I think, but it doesn't come out on VOD until the following Friday.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a dead week. So either we're going to make a full episode out of the Dune trailer, or we might do it. It might be time for Blade Runner on some all-timers with you.
Ooh,
but we'll have to figure it out and make
sure.
it a good episode. But other than that, I have a question for you. I was thinking about this. I tweeted it. I don't know if you've seen it yet. This is just a thought-provoking question that I feel like everyone has some sort of version of, and it is, what is the weirdest thing that your family did growing up that you never realized was weird until like someone called you out on it later on? Because I was thinking about this. Mine is great. For my family, we had, and this is not anything movie related, nothing of film, pop culture.
Dude,
anything.
yours is weird though.
This is just a great conversation starter. I want to just use this as our icebreaker to get the episode started. But my family, we had candlelit dinners every night until I was like maybe 16 years old. It was up until the point where Rebecca and I had started dating, and she like realized it and then like sort of brought it up, and I was like, "What, you guys don't like?" She's like, "Didn't you realize when you went over to friends' houses or something?" I was like, "I've never thought about it."
Bro.
But it was just, it didn't matter if we were having like steak or pizza or like anything. Like it didn't matter what the quality of the meal was, how
broke
fancy
out
it
the
was.
matches or the lighter, and
Yeah, we had like tall, gigantic, like 1 foot long candles sticking up out of the candlesticks. And then finally, after Rebecca called us out on it, or called me out on it, like I would rush to set the table and stuff and turn the light on before anybody could light candles. And now we finally phased out of that after that embarrassment.
Wild, bro.
But
no, when you said that, I saw that on Twitter, and the first thing I thought of, and I don't know if anyone, I'm sure people have seen this movie that I'm about to talk about. I don't know if you've seen it, but American Beauty with Kevin Spacey, the Sam Mendes movie.
mm-hmm.
Like,
I have not seen it, but
okay, so it's pretty famous scenes. It happens a couple times in the movie, but they have like a long dining table, and it's all in like this like kind of like longer shot with a wide lens, and they have I think they have candlelight, and it's just the mom and the dad and the daughter, and it's super awkward and it's kind of weird. And like when you mentioned that, was like the first thing I thought of. But no, I mean that's definitely a good one. I don't know. Things that our family did.
I feel like it's that I didn't mean to spring this on you. It's definitely something that you think about, but I feel like once you think
I'm
about
sure a
it,
lot of people do have things like this, so they don't realize till later on. For me, maybe it's something like, I don't know if this is the norm, but for like Christmas, we celebrate Christmas in my family, and like we would do a large amount of presents on Christmas Eve and on Christmas morning.
I've heard of that. I know
like
some people that do
the same amount essentially. Like I know some people just do one present or like a small
That's what
amount.
we did. Yeah, we always did one on Christmas Eve and then the rest on Christmas morning. But
yeah, we did like
I've heard of that, but I know that's not the norm.
Yeah. So that, I guess that would probably be maybe one of the things that like
I'm glad you've got a somewhat normal one, and that I'm just out here embarrassing myself. So
no. I'm sure I definitely have some weirder things, I'm sure, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to think because you don't know what's weird necessarily.
Right. I guess nobody. Maybe you
your
do
own
have all these, but
perspective.
nobody's ever called you out on them. So
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
don't know yet. It's still hidden.
Exactly.
All
No,
right. Well, that was fun. So let's use that to get into this news.
leave your answers down in the comments below if you're on YouTube
Yes,
listening to this.
definitely do. Let us know what's weird that you
Or on
guys did.
Twitter.
Yeah, I was hoping. I was like, as I tweeted that, I was like, this is something that like, if enough people quote tweet this, then it could be like one of those viral things. But at this point, I've got 10 likes, no responses. So it seems like everyone's just like you.
Everyone's just too weirded out by what you said.
They're enjoying my embarrassment, but they don't want to share their own. So,
oh, I'm dead.
So if you have anything good, let us know. But right now we're talking about some news. We're talking The Mandalorian Season 2 hitting Disney Plus on October 30th. This was a surprise drop because Disney and Lucasfilm felt the need to divert attention from John Boyega's article. I assume that was Josh's theory.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not coincidental. I mean, John Boyega, for anyone who doesn't know, you should go read his piece with, I think it was GQ UK. And basically he just lit up Disney. He lit up the new Star Wars trilogy, talking about how they don't do enough service or build up their characters, of color, or they don't respect them. He didn't get a full arc. He was kind of, the audience was hoodwinked. He was hoodwinked in a way. Because, with The Force Awakens, it was kind of built up like he was going to be the Jedi. He was going to be the new, stormtrooper turned Jedi. And I thought that would just have been such a cool idea. Of course, it ended up not being him. It ended up being Rey, played by Daisy Ridley. And yeah, he just kind of got shafted. He was basically Rey's little buddy that helped her out and was always there for her. And so yeah, he feels very hard done by all of that, and you can understand why. But yeah, it's a very interesting and insightful piece to look at someone who's been in the industry and been some of the biggest films of all time, and kind of hearing his experience. And of course, Star Wars and Disney launched at the very in the same morning, essentially, the Mandalorian season 2 news, where it is going to be available on Disney Plus October 30th. And that definitely drew some of the attention away and got people, hey, look over here, more exciting, good Star Wars stuff is coming up.
You mean Disney and Star
not so
Wars?
Much worried about these old movies with this old actor who's not going to be around anymore. So
yeah,
definitely a messy situation. But it worked, I think you could say.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying, they're finally like, oh wait, this isn't all good. Like, this isn't just the perfect storybook that we're led to believe. Wait a minute, man, Baby Yoda, more Baby Yoda. Here we go.
Baby Yoda, exactly... he's a character of color. Go.
For all of our people of color out there, our aliens of color, our green alien followers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so obviously, focusing more on the Mandalorian news than the John Boyega news, but you recently finally just caught up with that first season, and I'm pretty sure I remember you saying that was the best thing that Disney's ever done with Star Wars. Like most people, you enjoyed that a whole lot. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely better than all the new films that they've done since The Force Awakens. And I think better than, certainly better than all the prequel movies. And, I think even, I haven't gotten around to finally knocking out and actually sitting down watching the original trilogy beginning to end. But for me, all the stuff I've actually consumed and sat down and watched for Star Wars, it's by far the most enjoyable. I think the best executed thing. Very, very, character focused. I love The Mandalorian. I love Baby Yoda, as everyone else does. And just the way that they kind of drew the arc from beginning to end. And each episode's kind of its own thing, but then it all comes together. So it was just very enjoyable. Cinematography is great. Effects are great. A lot of practical stuff. And just getting back more to, I think, the heart and like the spirit of Star Wars, which are kind of these little Western, Seven Samurai
episodic,
type stories. Yeah, episodic and not so large, and the galaxy ending consequences and all that. I think it's fun to kind of go back to the basics. And I think that explains why it was received so well. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I was a huge fan as well. It's not, we don't really know much. We got the little teaser poster with the date basically, but it wasn't anything more than just the date and the title. So there is some speculation about what to expect. I mean, obviously we're going to
probably figure out more about Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito's character, and his dark saber. We're gonna see more about Baby Yoda and who he is, what he is. Tamara Morrison, who played Jango Fett in the prequel trilogy, he's been cast.
Yeah,
so that
that's
means
exciting.
that we're expecting Boba Fett to return at some point. There were people breaking down and like enhance, zoom in, enhance to see if that was him, like in the shadows during the Mandalorians, like their little base. And then also there's rumors that Rosario Dawson will be playing Ahsoka Tano, who I don't know if you've watched the Clone Wars animated series. I've been like watching it, so I haven't seen it all, but I know Ahsoka is like Anakin's Padawan, a Jedi that is just a fan favorite, and that Rosario Dawson has been wanting to play it, and that's been the rumor. So people are saying that either she's going to have her own series or she'll be worked into Mandalorian at some point. So still not a lot of concrete stuff, but some pretty exciting speculation to hold us over until October 30th, which is not far away. And I feel like a lot of people were shocked by this news because of obviously everything has been shut down. But they were filming this pretty much right. I think the first day of filming on season 2 was the day after season 1 dropped on Netflix last November. So they were getting after it. So this was not coronavirus related at all.
Yeah, no, I think this will be definitely great for Disney and Disney Plus from a business standpoint to get some big, fresh content on there during.
That's not Mulan.
That's not Mulan, and anyone can watch it if they have a subscription. Yeah, I think, and of course, as we said, coming at this particular moment with this news, it gets a lot of heat off them regarding John Boyega's article and the Mulan release, which has been less than, popular, I would say. And also, I would definitely expect some sort of trailer, some sort of footage later this month or potentially early in October to, get people more amped up. I think as soon as someone sees Jango Fett or, Boba Fett around, it's going to be like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this. And
right.
I can understand why. So.
Yeah, well, the Mandalorian, this is me in honor of Jake, channeling my transitions here, but the Mandalorian was not affected by coronavirus, but the Batman was. The Batman has halted production once again, shortly after restarting production, because Robert Pattinson reportedly, well, first of all, they reported it was just a person in the production, and then it came to light that it was actually Robert Pattinson tested positive with coronavirus.
Yeah.
So I know this is something you had a couple thoughts on this on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just talking about like, hey, it's not the end of the world. This is going to happen. And it's not the end of movies because we've seen Dune did their reshoots. They didn't have any issues. What else has been restarted?
Jurassic World 3.
Yeah, they've been going for a month or so now, and they haven't had any issues. So, I mean, I don't think this is like – it's just noteworthy because it is Robert Pattinson and it is like the star of it.
Yeah, that's definitely the story because, production just restarted less than a week ago, I think, maybe very early last week. And so it didn't even last, a business, week essentially. And for one crew member or someone involved, the production to get it is one thing. And then of course, soon finding out that it was the Batman himself with COVID is definitely concerning. And you want everyone to be as safe as possible. And they're investing millions and millions of dollars for precautions. And The Batman is another Warner Brothers film, and Warner Brothers also did the Dune reshoots in Budapest. And I have a lot of information. They went to great lengths to keep everyone safe, do extensive testing, extensive, sanitation and safety protocols. And like I said, they had no issues on that one. Jurassic World, I think, had one very small instance of maybe a handful of crew members on the second unit getting testing positive, and they were able to isolate them quickly and then have the first unit take back over. But this is definitely the hands down most notable and concerning COVID case with film productions going on right now. And hopefully, Robert Pattinson makes a quick full recovery. He has no issues or long lasting issues, and anyone else who might have been in contact with him either tests negative or also recovers as well. But as you kind of talked about, this is a huge name. But on top of that, we also heard with regards to someone who isn't even necessarily involved in a production right now, isn't in front of the camera, is The Rock Dwayne
Yeah.
Johnson. Can you tell us more about what's going on with him and what he kind of posted an announcement video of sorts, kind of tackling it?
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of one of those, like, again, if the people who use the kind of idea of like, oh, young people can't get it or fit people can't get it or anything, like, this is Dwayne the Rock Johnson. This
Yeah.
is this is like the epitome of strength and health and fitness, and he still had it. I know he posted, like you said, that video that he, his wife, and his two young daughters all tested positive for it. But of course, they were all in good health, doing well. On the other side of it, they didn't want to like raise any alarm while it was still like they were in the thick of things. But yeah, I mean, just kind of like one of those shocking things that you would never really expect someone like that to have it. But again, it just shows that it doesn't care if you're the fittest guy in the world, a superstar, a billionaire, an actor, or just a normal person. It doesn't matter who you are, that you're all equally at risk. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I love The Rock. The Rock is my guy, so best wishes to him and Terramana Tequila out there.
Yeah. It's definitely good that that he talked about kind of after the fact and didn't like freak anyone out, and they're kind of already have it behind them, and it obviously wish that no one he hadn't gotten it or his family hadn't gotten it, but it's good to hear that things are moving forward and they're pretty much fully recovered at this point. Because I mean, that guy, not on top of being a human being and someone who has a family to care for and everything, he's probably the busiest man in Hollywood with regards to producing and acting and all these other things. So
working out at 3 a.m.
and working out at 3 a.m. His schedule's insane. So everyone it's just another reminder, be as safe as possible. Take care of yourself, take care of your family, wear a mask, social distance as much as you can, and within reason, and but just be aware of where you live and kind of the environment you're in and how you can minimize everything, because this is it's not ending anytime soon. We still have months and months to go, so buckle up and be smart.
Yep, that's your inside the film room PSA right there about this is our official platform. We are anti-coronavirus here on this podcast.
100%. Very hot take, I know, but
all right, moving on back to some more serious stuff. No Time to Die. We got a new trailer for this. Again, this movie was supposed to come out in the spring, got moved back to November now. Yeah. I am very excited. I thought this trailer was awesome. Like, this was one of those movies where, like, sure, I was excited for it, but then it just kind of, once the move happened and everything, I kind of like fell off the radar a little bit. But then to see, not that I wasn't ever interested in it in the first place, but to see this trailer bring it back up, it looked really good. I mean, this gave us our first sort of real look at Rami Malek as the villain. We got some really great shots of just like the cinematography here looked great. I love the shot of, I don't even know who it is. It's some like special forces going down the side of a building, and you see the reflection and like the pink skyline, and like that was a great shot. And again, seeing Ana de Armas, getting introduced to her, this movie is quickly shot back up my list for what I'm looking forward to at the end of the year.
Yeah, I basically have the same feelings I did before this trailer. I love the initial trailer we got. I thought it looked awesome. The cinematography, as you said, and the stunts, and just a big fan of Daniel Craig and the rest of the cast, Ana de Armas being the most notable, kind of newer addition. And yeah, I mean, my excitement level, it's hard at this point because when you have these films that continue to get delayed, and this one in particular, this is not the first time it was delayed because it had a troubled production, lost the director, gained a director. Initially, I think it was supposed to come out last November, so it's almost a full push from its original timing. And so, yeah, it's just a weird thing. I'm excited for it. I wouldn't want to miss Daniel Craig's last Bond film. I've been a big fan of his in the role, and most specifically Casino Royale and Skyfall. So still excited for it. It's just I'm not aching to see it like I am, like I was.
Another movie coming out at the end of the year.
Yeah, like Dune, or I mean, I'm more excited to see maybe even like Wonder Woman 1984. But which also shot with IMAX film cameras. So, but it does. I do think if this is stays on track and they're confident enough to keep it in November, I think it is going to be. It has a very good shot to be the biggest film of the year financially, and maybe it can sneak into the awards conversation, whether it's not even necessarily bigger stuff, but cinematography, sound and different things like that. So
Right.
it has a lot to gain.
And definitely on top of that, like the financials aspect, like this leads into the next point, talking about some dollar signs for Tenet. But
yeah,
you had talked about, so Tenet made $20.2 million in the US over this past weekend. It's nearing the $150 million mark globally, which is pretty on par with Warner Brothers is pleased with that, considering the current status in the US and around the world. But you kind of made the point, I believe, on Twitter, saying that like when you get your Wonder Womans or your Bonds or even like Black Widow or something coming out, that those are going to be more of like a litmus test to see where everything stands with audiences coming back, because of them being such a well-known franchise. So not just an individual. I mean, as big as Christopher Nolan is, like Tenet, again, being an original idea, something that's not really like this intense fandom behind it. But those would be the ones to potentially take off and get this thing back on track.
Definitely. I mean, Nolan's films have been wildly successful, for original ideas and his own screenplays and everything like that. But, he's never had $1 billion movie. I mean, his billion outside of Batman, and that's comic book movie. The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises both made over $1 billion. And I mean, how many $1 billion movies has the MCU had? How many $1 billion movies has DC Comics had? Skyfall made $1 billion. And Spectre, which was not super well received, made, I think, more than Inception did, which was like one of the most well received Nolan original films. So that it just goes to show the power of an IP and the power of something that people are invested in previously and have an attachment to, whether it's a character, a name, an actor in a certain role. I definitely think, especially domestically, Wonder Woman and Bond and Black Widow, the MCU, are the things to look forward to as far as a true gauge of the financial prospects if you're going to release something that big during a pandemic. Because really at the end of the day, the other thing you have to factor in is the quality of the movie and how much people are going to enjoy it. I think the general audience member, especially in the United States, is going to enjoy an MCU movie or a Wonder Woman movie a lot more than they would enjoy Tenet for a number of reasons. So it's a very tricky situation. And it's going to continue to develop, and we could continue to see delays. We could continue to see, maybe negotiations to do video on demand, in succession, or maybe another Disney Plus release, or maybe an HBO Max release. I think everything's on the table at this point. And I personally would always prefer to see something in theaters, but obviously the situation worldwide is not, fully capable, or even in the United States. So, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But
definitely a promising start, though, with the way that Tenet played out. I mean,
I think
best they could have hoped for.
150 million worldwide so far through its first week and in change. I think it's solid. It's not great. It's not bad.
But then you've also got the long rollout that they've talked about.
They have a
before.
long way to go. They could play it until December or January, and then of course they could do an early VOD release. And then they'll have physical media at the end of it. So I think financially, I mean, they knew that this was going to be kind of, I mentioned, I think last week, it was going to be kind of a sacrificial lamb as far as maybe not necessarily looking to make its money all the way back or making a big profit. Whereas I think something like Wonder Woman and Black Widow or No Time to Die are looked at as safer bets. And the fact that they're coming out later, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months from now, is also makes them a safer bet, because hopefully COVID will be more under control, numbers going down at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And what you can watch safely from your home, though, is Mank. That is the upcoming, another Netflix film, the latest from David Fincher. We got our first look at some images on Twitter from the Netflix film account. Yes. This quick log line here. 1930s Hollywood is reevaluated through the eyes of scathing social critic and alcoholic screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz as he races to finish the screenplay of Citizen Kane for Orson Welles. So this is inspired by a true story, starring Gary Oldman. David Fincher, first movie since 2014 with Gone Girl. What is your level of interest here? I mean, I'll be the first one to say it. I love his his movies. I haven't seen all of them, but like love Gone Girl, love Social Network, Zodiac. I loved Mindhunter on Netflix, but I don't know, something about this. It just like it doesn't seem like his traditional type of movie, and it doesn't really appeal to me. I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I have David Fincher is one of the first directors that I really accessed as a younger, person, and early in my teens, maybe. Fight Club and Seven and The Social Network were all movies I really, really liked. And it obviously had a more serious, dramatic and darker style than other movies I was probably watching around that time. And since then, since 2014, I can't even express just how much my film knowledge has grown and my tastes have changed and everything. And that was the last time he had a movie come out. But yeah, this is definitely a different type of film. I think it'll be interesting to see how much of his own personality and style he can kind of inject to a biopic about a screenwriter in Hollywood and old Hollywood. But it is a screenplay that his late father wrote. It's about Citizen Kane. A lot of people say is one of the greatest films of all time. Certainly one of the most influential. I think it could be fun. I mean, they're shooting in black and white. And they're shooting. I want to say I heard somewhere that they're using like old, kind of like film stock and old movie cameras, kind of like what they did with The Lighthouse, Robert Eggers, where they made it look like it was from that time period almost. Mm-hmm. So I think that could be cool. There's definitely a lot of cool visual stuff they can do with it. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are back to do the score. They've been collaborating with him forever. The Social Network, Zodiac. Some of my favorite movies ever, some of the best movies I think of the last 20 years.
I actually rewatched Zodiac earlier this week.
So good.
Great movie. I showed it to Rebecca. She was like, I'm in the mood for an intense movie. And I was like, I've got one for you.
That's a perfect one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know it's going to be good. He doesn't really make bad movies. It's just my level of excitement, my level of like interest. If he wasn't directing this, I would be a lot lower.
Right. I'm with you. I'll still, just being a fan of him, being accessible on Netflix, I'll still definitely watch this.
I'll watch it as soon as it's out.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not when you're like, oh, David Fincher's got a new movie, especially with his more recent track record, having done Zodiac, having done Gone Girl, and then 2 seasons of Mindhunter. Like, my guy's been on his serial killer shit for the last half decade.
Yeah.
But this just doesn't really like. And that's something that me and a lot of people like. True crime is like the thing still that people are really into. So I was like, man, if he can just keep pumping these out, he'll be like best director ever for me.
Yeah, no, I think the last thing is this does feel like the content, the story is more Oscar bait, if you will, and
Netflix
definitely
is
something
just desperate to try and they've been
exactly.
They've been last year with everything, with Marriage Story and Irishman and everything, and then Roma before that. Like, they're just like, please, we'll do whatever it takes.
Give us best picture, give us best. It's just so funny because I wouldn't really consider any of his other movies as Oscar bait, really. But again, this is something that definitely kind of more out of the ordinary for him, and I think returning after a 6-year layoff from directing feature films and having such a long history of success and being like well respected. And doing something like this, the Film Academy, they are known for 2 things. Number one, they don't really give a damn that much about minorities and don't really respect their films as much, which is ugly and gross and a whole nother conversation. And then secondly, they love movies that are about movies. Making movies. La La Land and The Artist. And The Artist being a black and white film that came out 10 years ago that most of you probably haven't heard of or maybe haven't seen or remember. Won Best Picture, won Best Actor. So I have no doubt that this is going to be Netflix's biggest awards play this season. And I think as of right now,
can it overcome the anti-Netflix bias? That Netflix is like, we know what you love. We're catering to
Alfonso
it. Please.
Cuarón, he won Best Director for Roma. So
right. But there's still sort of that stigma of like the Academy being anti-streaming. So.
There definitely is a tint to that, I think. If this was coming from a major studio like Warner Brothers or something, I think it would be a lot safer of a bet. But yeah, if I was putting money down right now, I'd probably put money on Fincher to win Best Director and get kind of finally win his Oscar that he's been searching for, and maybe even have it win Best Picture or something. On top of this, also I just got those in here real quick before we move on. The other second huge Oscar player that kind of has the historical context and political context on these things is another Netflix movie, and that's Trial of Chicago 7 from Aaron Sorkin.
Mm-hmm.
So those are really going to be the two, I think, the big dogs when it comes to director and Best Picture. I think as of right now, I think I could definitely see either of them winning it. I was actually just going through my predictions last night, and I plan on doing some sort of awards article on Inside the Film Room sometime in the next maybe month or so as more movies kind of get moving here. But yeah, I think Fincher is probably a safe bet for director at this point. I think I could see either Mank or Chicago 7, probably Chicago 7 winning Best Picture. Sight unseen, of course, because we haven't seen footage from either of them. But they definitely have all the hype at this point, and it's.
And they're both expected to be October, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
I know Chicago 7 is mid-October, and this is. I don't know if they've set a specific date for Mank, but
they haven't.
It's definitely fall. I've heard October, so I don't know if they'd load us up with both those at the same time, especially now that award season has been pushed back a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see. Speaking of awards, the one we all need, the best stunt category.
Yes, sir.
First look, I guess somewhat of a look. Shout out to Christopher McQuarrie's Instagram account, Mission Impossible 7. Got started. He said it's day one today with what can only be described as an epic bridge to nowhere in the middle of a snowy mountain range.
Also, a bridge to nowhere, also known as a ramp.
I guess. You think someone's driving off that?
Yeah, there have already been photos, dude.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that.
Tom Cruise is driving a motorcycle off that ramp and parachuting down to the ground.
I'm just waiting for. This is mind-boggling already.
Bro, the pictures are unbelievable.
See, I saw this and I thought that I don't know because it's like a ramp off of the side of a mountain with scaffolding underneath, and I thought that was just going to be digitally edited out.
And yeah.
Because,
I'm sure it will.
I wonder what he's going to be riding a ramp off. What the actual movie we'll see of him riding a motorcycle off of. I thought this was some sort of landing platform. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. It just shows me.
No, definitely. I definitely would recommend anyone listening go check out if you haven't seen him already. Go look on Twitter, Tom Cruise Norway, Tom Cruise Mission Impossible 7, or Google it. I mean, you'll find pictures.
Looking it up right now.
I just did it earlier. He was driving he's driving a motorcycle full speed off this ramp, flying off this cliff, hundreds of feet in the air. And then he has I think there's a ripcord or a backpack or something, and his parachute goes flying, and he just parachutes hundreds of feet down to the ground, and then I guess that they do another take or something. But I mean, it's Tom Cruise. He's wearing a mask or something to protect his eyes and all that stuff.
This is absurd.
And you can see also the cinematography.
He literally looks like I don't know, it looks like he's in one of those bodysuits almost of with the wings, but he's just pencil diving off this motorcycle.
And you can kind of see, maybe get an idea of what they're trying to do as far as the look or the cinematography, because I can see in the shot that I saw at the top of the ramp as the motorcycle's flying off and going through the air, there's a drone positioned at the top of the arc, and right in Tom Cruise's face, essentially. So we could get some really awesome shots of this stunt in the movie.
And I mean, that's something that we've always seen.
Exactly.
Especially in Fallout.
Yeah, in Fallout especially with the helicopter chase and the cliff fight and
the Halo jump and all that.
Yeah, the Halo jump. So they have spared no expense or, limits to what they can do.
Right. And I mean, obviously it's a big flashy action movie, but they do some really great technical stuff as well.
Yeah.
Here, it should not be overlooked as just a big explosive movie. So
yeah, agreed.
This is only after what we saw in Fallout. This is only getting us more and more excited for what's to come for Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible.
It's supposed to. It's almost if their schedule stays intact, it's supposed to be coming out in 14 months or something next November. So, hey, get hyped.
Hopefully we can go see it at a theater by then.
Hopefully there's still a society and civilization left over for us to go and watch a movie in a theater somewhere. But
man, I'm excited. But all right, that is it for news today. solid spread. Got to talk about some good stuff, and now it's time to get into our reviews. Like we said, this is a doubleheader today. We're starting off with I'm Thinking of Ending Things, the latest from Netflix and director Charlie Kaufman.
Jake, my boyfriend.
It's snowing.
Winter is coming in.
We have a real connection, a rare and intense attachment. I've never experienced anything like it. I'm thinking of ending things.
Huh?
What?
Did you say something?
I don't think so.
Weird.
I'm visiting Jake's parents for the first time. He hasn't been my boyfriend for very
They
long.
really are looking forward to meeting you.
I think of ending things.
Here they come.
Jake has told us so much about you.
He's told me so much about both of you, too.
And you came anyway? Jake tells me you're studying quantum psychics.
Physics.
Really?
But there's just something profoundly wrong
Are
here.
you okay?
Yeah, I think of ending
I
things.
am so glad.
So this movie, very divisive for the two of us. I will just get it out of the way. I did not enjoy this movie much at all. Johnny, on the other hand, absolutely adored it. But let's give, before we get into any of that, let's give a little background on what we're dealing with here. Like I said, latest from director Charlie Kaufman. He's been the mind behind some of these twisted, kind of creative, out there movies. Synecdoche, New York, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Being John Malkovich. I've never seen any of his work before, so I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. What's your experience level?
Yeah. So let me just provide a little bit of context of my own experience, I guess. I saw Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He wrote that film. He didn't direct it like he did this one. But his screenwriting ability and what he does with all these films are surrealist to some extent. Absurdist as well is a good way to kind of classify it. But Synecdoche, New York, and Anomalisa are his two previous directed films. I have not seen either of those. This is my first experience with him as a director, but I love Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. When I saw it years and years ago, it was so upsetting and so like kind of soul crushing, while being amazing, that I have not watched it again since then. I want to. I think I'm going to do it soon because it's on Netflix now in the US if anyone's interested in watching it. It's super good. And then Being John Malkovich, I watched that in college for a film course that I was taking. I loved that. Very funny, very absurd. And that was another one that he wrote as well, and Spike Jonze directed it. So coming into this, I had pretty high expectations just because I'm such a fan of surrealist movies and, things like Yorgos Lanthimos, The Lobster, and, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And I love Enemy, the film by Denis Villeneuve. I'm a big fan of that as well. And
As am I. Yeah. That was a big one for me as well. So it's not that I hate the genre or the idea of like the surreal. But
no, this is. I mean, out of all the ones I just named, I would say this is the most aggressively, upsettingly like surreal, kind of in your face, and very it touches, at least me with my experience, in a way that these other ones didn't. And I think part of it is it's more based in like a thriller sensibility or a horror sensibility than something like Being John Malkovich or Synecdoche, New York, from what I know of that movie, or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And another thing that we have to keep in mind here is that this is an adaptation.
Right.
It's a novel, and he's adapted the script. And of course, when you adapt something, you might want to tweak some things in the story or with the characters. And then as a director, you really have to visualize it, and you have to communicate things through the camera and stuff like that. So it's a very different experience, and I have not read the novel. Neither of us have. I do plan on reading it at some point. I think I would probably like it. But yeah,
that's one of my things. I was wondering, after having seen what I saw on the TV on this movie, I was like, how in the world does
right?
Like, it was so confusing for me. I was able to follow stuff, but just like you said, the surreal, the absurd, like all of that was worked into this. I was like, I don't know how any of this could make any sense on the page. Like if I'm trying to read, like how do you, it's like now how does the text work? Is like now the young woman looks different. She has a different name and does the like if I would just, I feel like I would just get confused reading it. It's like, okay, so now she's Lucy, now it's Louisa, now it, like, who are all these characters? So it's just overwhelming for me. But okay, again, so let's lay the foundation for anyone who hasn't seen it, doesn't know what we're talking about, which I feel like you're going to be very lost if that's the case. But this movie, starring Jesse Buckley, Jesse Plemons, Toni Collette, and David Thewlis, great cast here. That was one of the highlights for me. Was just like the performances themselves. I may not have enjoyed the actual movie, but I could definitely respect and appreciate the actors and what they were doing on screen. But currently holds an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. There is not an audience score yet, which I guess just because there haven't been enough reviews for it just having come out on Netflix. But I'm very interested to see what that is, because I feel like the common viewer will be more aligned with myself. Now I mean, correct me if you think that that's not the case, but I feel like just most people turning this on Netflix will be like, what the hell am I watching? Is that safe to say?
I mean, I think that's probably safe to say. I mean, the general person, I mean, we say general audience or general viewer, but you can only generalize so much. But in general, I think, films of this kind of ilk and more surrealist, absurd, because they don't follow convention. They don't follow what most movies are like as far as structure or characterization or even performance and like different things like that are usually very easy to kind of follow and pick up on in a regular movie. I think someone watching The Killing of a Sacred Deer or Enemy, the two movies I mentioned earlier, I don't think those people would follow them as well or understand exactly what's happening as well. Or even something like, I've seen Being John Malkovich, which he wrote. It's so weird and it's very out there, but even that's more accessible because it's, it has a very kind of clear set of rules and establishes what the world's like. Here, it's like there are no rules. It's like you're dropped in and it's, all bets are off. You're on your own in a lot of ways. And for me, that was the most enjoyable, one of the most enjoyable things about it was that it was just, I was immediately engrossed in it. I was immediately attached to Jessie Buckley's character, who we'll call Lucy, for the purposes of this review. And,
that's probably simplifying it, but that's the best we can do. Yeah,
and then Jesse Plemons, her boyfriend Jake, and just their dynamic, and a lot of it is it's based, I think a lot of things this film touches on a surface level, at least, are like, relationships and like the issues that are, that it can exist in those, and, toxic masculinity and the issues of, trauma or maybe like depression, disassociation, anxiety, all these different things, all, revolving around mental health and just what it can be like when you're in a relationship where you feel maybe trapped, or if you're working a job that you don't enjoy and you wish you were doing something else, or if you're in school for something that you're not enjoying and you wish you were doing something else, just things like that, without going too much into spoilers or touching on that. But the basic plot of this is that this woman, Lucy, is having second thoughts about this relationship she's in. She's thinking of ending things, as the title indicates. But despite that, she goes on this road trip with her boyfriend, Jake, to visit his family. She's never met his parents. They live out in a rural area. They're on a farm, and it's a snowstorm is kind of starting at this point. And they go and meet the mother, played by Toni Collette, and the father, played by David Thewlis. And there's a lot of things from there go a certain way. And I do think kind of what we talked about on our own is that once you kind of get into the meeting the parents situation, that can kind of be the tipping point for where you. That's
the make or break moment for viewers.
Yeah, you can either be you're either fully in or you're kind of tuning out. And I think you could tell us more about where that worked for you and where it didn't.
Right. I would say, like you mentioned, it starts that the actual travel to the house, to the farm, probably a 25 minute car ride scene where it's just Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons, and they're discussing. You hear sort of her internal monologue as he's almost lecturing, ranting about whatever topics, poetry, film, any sort of like topic that he wants to talk about, and it seems that was like enthralling to me. I loved their back and like, as uncomfortable as it is, it was supposed to be that way. They're like back and forth, and I was like, okay, I'm down with this. We can make this work. And then you get to the house, and there's, again, I love Toni Collette, love Hereditary. Got some of the similar vibes there, just with her being like crazed and out there. But I was like all in, ready for something crazy to happen. And just the way that, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of this movie I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen, and I never felt like I got the payoff that I was hoping for. I mean, it kept twisting itself on the surrealism, like I don't know, I just kept that's where, after I made maybe like 10, 15, 20 minutes with the family, got through the dinner scene maybe, and then I was like, okay, well, this isn't really going the way I thought it was going to be going. This is kind of where I decided that it wasn't for me.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from in that regard for sure. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if, most people felt that way. For me, it just was more than any other movie all year, and especially in this pandemic year, which has been so strange, and for film fans and film industry has not been normal, and it's been less films than we would like to see, and especially in like a theater or something like that. But I've been waiting all year for a movie that I just loved, like fully unabashedly loved, and was totally gripped by from beginning to end, and everything about it technically, and the story and the characters. And finally, like this, I think I knew maybe about I think for me it was like the point where you were lost and kind of felt disengaged, was when I knew. I was like, okay, this is the movie.
This is the one.
This is the one. I mean, it very simple. And again, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but for me, there was a moment. You mentioned Hereditary, of course. Toni Collette starred in that, and we still demand justice for her not getting an Oscar nomination. But,
yes.
And I mentioned Enemy as well. And for me, this movie, the vibe and the sensation it created in me as a person, as a viewer, was very similar to both those movies in a way that it's hard to describe. And I was talking to my friend Josh Martin about this, who sometimes works with the site and has been on the podcast before. He, it felt like a mix of the two, and it also felt like a mix in the fact that I think what I've come to realize is that surrealist, films, when they engage in horror in certain ways, it's terrifying to me. It's very unsettling, very upsetting, I think Ari Aster would describe it as like upsetting, and he's seen a lot more movies than I have, but just listening to him talk and seeing Hereditary and Midsommar, I think he would love this movie. If you're a fan of Ari Aster in particular, I think you should check it out, just for how weird and how dark it can be. But there was a moment when they're at the house and they go and meet the parents, and they're kind of waiting, and they're waiting for the parents to come down from downstairs and to meet face to face. And when they come down the stairs and they're on the steps and they're sitting there talking, and it's just the four of them. I mean, there's nothing really there's so much happening in the frame, and there's like nothing happening. There's no other way for me to describe it, but when they're standing there, and David Thewlis in particular is standing there, I mean, I got chills from head to toe, like I had been struck by a lightning bolt. Like, it's just, it's so indescribable what it is, what they're doing, like with the performance and the way they're framed in the picture and the way it's lit. And it's just so unsettling in such a like visceral way. It's almost like reading like a Stephen King, short story or novel, like something very, terrifying in that kind of sense. But, and then from there, it was more of that. And it was also some more, I think I also talked to you about this, Zach, was at one point, I mean, I was watching through my fingers, through my hands, covering my face for like a 20 or 30 minute period, because I was so freaked out and so unsure of what was going to happen and what exactly was going on. Because you very much feel like you're in her shoes. You're
experiencing
shoes.
It alongside the young woman. But I was the same way. Like I definitely felt the unsettling nature that they were trying to make viewers feel, and I wasn't quite watching through fingers, but I was like unnerved watching that, trying to figure out what was going to happen. And I kept waiting for some sort of, like, there's a scene where she goes down to the basement, like it's hinted at early, like stay out of the basement. She goes down eventually. And like, I'm like, okay, here it is. This is where it's going to happen. and then it's just kind of like more of the same of these, just like the surrealism and absurdism that I guess that in itself is what is Kaufman's like twist. His that is like the payoff.
It's not what you
the
expect.
The scariness there, but like it wasn't really like what spoke to me and what I was looking for. So I mean, I guess that's kind of what made me feel kind of underwhelmed by that. But I mean, I feel like for me there was a lot of points. Like I know I said to you guys, like as I was jokingly saying, like I'm too dumb to understand this. This movie just went over my head. But like there are things I'd gone to bed on Friday night maybe, and then woke up the next morning to 120 DMs in our group with you, Jake, and Josh. Like as you guys all saw the movie and loved it, and I'm out here on the outside looking in. But I read
Squidward
through everything
meme.
exactly. But I read through everything that you guys were saying about how like this connects with that, or like this is what they did here. That's where this that happened at the very beginning comes full circle to this. I'm like, okay, this makes me feel better because I also like noticed those things. I made those connections, so at least I know that I'm not just like incompetent of watching this movie. But I mean, it still just like didn't really connect for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, it's pointless to kind of to reiterate the fact that art, of course, is subjective, and not everyone's gonna feel the same way about it. You know, because at the end of the day, it's about your own, you know, your life experiences, or kind of what you look for when you're watching a movie or a book or something like that. To me, it was just maybe part of it for me as well was that I had very little knowledge of this movie going into it. I knew it was Charlie Kaufman. I knew it was going to be kind of surrealist. I knew what the basic, you know, log line for the story was, but I didn't watch the trailer, which was, I'm so glad I didn't watch the trailer. And I try to do that with smaller movies where you know, there's only so much they can show. It's not like a blockbuster where you can show a bunch of effects and stuff, and it's still going to be the experience of watching it with the characters and all that stuff is going to be different. But in something like this where, you know, anything could happen, you know, from my point of view. And so when you see all the footage and they throw stuff in there that I never would have expected them to have in this movie. So I'm so glad that I held off and could wait a month to actually watch it beginning to end. And I was definitely surprised about where it ended up going, especially in, you know, the final 30 minutes or so.
The high school.
Yeah. And so
again, I had gotten, before you continue, I just gotten to the point there where I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't understand this, but
yeah.
Anyways.
And I don't know. I think I picked up early on at maybe subconsciously even, because I didn't really think too much about it until, like you said, me and Jake and Josh got into that discussion in the middle of the night, because my Friday was just so hectic. But when I really sat down and was able to think about it, the more I thought about the movie, the more I loved it, the more I appreciated like little things that Kaufman did, or things that, you know, the cinematographer did, and like, you know, things in the performance and stuff. It's just, I don't know, something like this. And I described this in one of the tweets I sent out about it, but it just feels like a very layered, nuanced, like piece of literature, like something I would have read in AP Lit or something. Like there's all this symbolism and all these weird different aspects that you can kind of, you know, pick and prod at and kind of piece together later on. And, you know, I also said in the group chat, I feel like you could take any scene or sequence from this movie and you could kind of write an essay about it. You could talk about like how something this character says informs what this character is doing, or what that means about them, and just kind of their relationship and all things that they do with the camera and things they do with the costumes and stuff like that. To me, it was just, I understand why a lot of people wouldn't enjoy it that much, or it wouldn't necessarily work for them, even if they do understand all the things, the clues, and how the story ultimately, what it ultimately means and what the characters represent. But for me, it worked. It just worked perfectly. And it was probably a combination of my expectation and a combination of my own personal taste and kind of like what I like to pick out on. But I don't know. I can't wait to watch it again when I feel comfortable enough and I'm not home alone or something. I have someone to show it to maybe. But yeah, I was a huge fan. I know this is not going to be an awards contender likely in many categories, if any, just because it's so weird and not something that they typically go for.
You can push for it with the NCFCA. You're going to get to submit your
nominations. I will.
You're going to campaign for it. Slide in everyone's DMs. Try and get them to nominate it as well.
But for me, again, this is by far my favorite film of the year, the best film of the year that I've seen. And if I was a member of the Academy, like the Film Academy, you know, at the end of the day, I just can't imagine 5 or 4 more movies this year that have better cinematography that are better than this, or the direction, or some of these performances, or the hair and the makeup, and just so many different cool things that they did. And for an adapted screenplay, again, we were kind of talking about how weird it must be to take a novel and what the novel must look like and translate it in this way. I think it should definitely be a lock for that, at least. So I would recommend it. I always think it's hard to when I recommend something, I fully recommend it. Like, I don't say like, oh, you may not like it, or just take it for what it is. Like, I like it, and I think you should give it a chance, even if maybe it's not your typical cup of tea. I know for a fact I'm probably gonna go get my sister and her boyfriend to watch this with me and see what they think and how weird they kind of react to it. But yeah, I give it a shot. I think especially right now, given the pandemic and then the situation we're all in, the fact that it's new and it's on Netflix and it's so weird and kind of divisive, I definitely think it's worth a watch, or at least give it a shot. If you feel like it's not your thing and you decide to turn it off, hey, it's not like you had to go to the cinema and buy a ticket and walk out. So
the accessibility gives it some added points.
Yeah, that too.
Even for me, I mean, I'm with you. I would definitely recommend for people to check it out and make the decision on their own. But I will say that it's either going to be a love it or hate it. I don't think that people are going to fall too much in the middle. I mean, I gave this may sound like contradictory, because I gave it a 46 out of 100, which is pretty much in the middle. But I mean, basically, like, I gave it points for being able to acknowledge everything that, like, yes, I know what you're doing, but it didn't work for me, but I can still respect the craft behind it. And then again, like I said, the performances were all great. Those definitely bumped it up. The accessibility of it, the look of it still, I mean, I agree with you on some of the technical aspects. When it comes to like makeup or production design or cinematography. So, I mean, all that stuff is there for me, but just the story itself, and like what I felt like I came away from it with is what kept me from really fully investing in it.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, and I'm also sorry to hear that this other film we're about to get into did not.
What was your score? Did you say your score?
My score, I gave it like 4.5 out of 5 stars, and 90 out of 100. Okay. Again, I think I do genuinely think that could definitely increase on rewatch.
Upon a rewatch.
Or
I mean, the way you're talking about it here and in the DMs, I think that I'm surprised that it's a 4.5 and not a 5. But I know that the 5s from Johnny are elusive.
I think part of it though is really, I mean, I gave it 4.5 right after I finished watching it, and I hadn't
before
even
you had the process.
It.
Yeah.
Now that I've processed it and thought about just how intricate it is and how much I appreciate it more, I do think it's very close to being a masterpiece. Like, it's on that level for me, and and I said this on Twitter as well. I do think at the end of the year, definitely at the end of the year, this is going to be in my top 5 probably. I'd be shocked if it falls out. And it's funny because all year it was in my top 5 or 10 for most anticipated, and I'm glad that this is the one that like really lived up to it. But at the end of the decade, it's 2020 now and 2030. I mean, I could genuinely see this being in my top 30 35 movies, because it's just so unique and it fits such a small niche for me. I think that it'll definitely be lasting in my mind for quite a while.
Well, I don't even want to think about 2030 yet, but I will say that this probably will not be up there for me, but maybe I'll have a change of heart by then. But like you said, this next one, as much as this lived up to the hype for you, Mulan on Disney Plus.
Close the gates!
6 of our northern cities have fallen in a coordinated attack. Their leader fights alongside a witch.
Crush these murderers,
Your Majesty.
Every family must contribute 1 man to fight.
You're a war hero. You've already made many great sacrifices.
My father cannot fight, so I will take his place.
Mixed. I'm not going to go, it's not all bad, but I mean, this is Mulan. I mean, it's, I was the only one who saw this one. So again, like I said, Johnny's sort of going to, after we hit through the basics here of setting it up, it's kind of going to be like a an interview to get Johnny involved here, but this is the latest live action Disney remake. We've had Lion King, we've had Beauty and the Beast, we've had Aladdin, Jungle Book, we've had all sorts of different versions of remakes, and to varied success. This one, I'm surprised to say, has a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes right now from the critics, 55% from the audience, which is usually, I feel like with these kind of things, it's the opposite way around, especially with the Disney ones, that it's the critics are like, it's all right. But then just because of how much people love Disney, the audience score is higher. But myself, I gave it a 56, so I'm kind of right there with the audience. But again, it's pretty similar. It's a remake, pretty similar plot to the original. There's a few twists. I mean, for the most part, it's still young woman pretends to be a man so that she can join the army to fight for her family, replacing her father. So we've got Mulan joining the Imperial Army to defend from northern invaders. She's masquerading as a man, tested every step of the way, and she must harness her inner strength and embrace her true potential. So, again, there's some varied twists here that we're going to get into. But for the most part, if you've seen the original, you should be familiar with what we've got. And I think the biggest talking point before we get into specifics here is that the whole format of this release. This movie was supposed to come out in March. It was like right on the verge before the entire world shut down, and then got pushed back a couple times, played chicken with Tenet, and finally went to Disney Plus for quote unquote premiere access, meaning $29.99 additional charge on top of your $7 membership per month, so that you can have early access before the general release on Disney Plus December 4th. So I just want to, before we get into anything about the movie, just what is your takeaway from this process? We've heard that it's been a very underwhelming amount of subscribers who are actually deciding to pull the trigger here.
Oh man. I mean, it's complicated, as all things are, especially on the business side of things. I think that I don't know. It was hard.
I feel like it's good to just get it over with. Like they needed to get this out there.
I think so too. Because at the real crux of the issue for me goes back to the fact that no one has ever really been excited for this movie. Like, again, I'm generalizing, but the general audience, the average moviegoer, maybe in just the United States, for example, like there's been a lot of talk on Twitter ever since this was announced that they were making this movie, that the people, they were worried that it was going to, go too far away from the original. Or there wasn't going to be dance sequences and music and songs, or that there wasn't going to be, what's the name of the dragon, Mushu?
Mushu, yeah.
And just things like that. And for me, I've seen the original once or twice, I think. It's a really great animated movie. It's one of Disney's better classic movies, I think. But for me, it was never like, oh man, I'm going to die if they don't have those things in there. But I just don't know. At this point, I think a large part of it is the kind of exhaustion of the live action remakes.
Right.
They make a ton of money, and a lot of that is, families and kids, and they can go. And but for me, I just this one in particular, I was never fully on board with. I thought that they had potential to do cool stuff with it. With regards to, obviously, of course, having an all Asian cast and having big.
The approach to it, I feel like, is just with the whole, like you said, taking away some of those core aspects, but also like, okay, we're going to make this more of a traditional martial arts inspired movie. Like the way that they did that, I mean, that kind of, I feel like it gained some new people, but it also alienated some others who were hoping for more of that classic approach to a movie that they know and love. But
the real funny thing about it is I think that they could have found a good, really common ground or happy medium for everyone, but they kind of ended up pleasing not a lot of people maybe in the process. Like, I don't know. It just seems to me that they didn't go all out with the full blown, wuxia, like martial arts, classic style. And they didn't do enough of the subscribing to the original animated film and having more fantastical, fun, kid friendly elements. It's just, I don't know. It just feels like a very strange movie from conception to me. I don't know if it was
And,
the wrong.
and then when you couple that with the whole release debacle, I mean,
that's
it's
a
a
debacle
recipe
on
for
top of
disaster.
it. It just feels like it's been kind of building towards this failure all along.
It's because when you think about it, it's like, okay, $29.99. If it's you or me, I had tweeted that I would not be watching this movie because of that, but then I was able to get a screener for it, so sure, I'm gonna watch it. It's free.
Yeah.
But like, I can't blame you whatsoever for not paying $30 for it. I mean, we are AMC in a traditional time where AMC Stubs members $20 for like 3 movies a week.
Yeah.
But like, if you're a family with 3 kids, 4 kids at home, $30 on Disney Plus beats.
That's not bad.
That beats going to the theater and paying $15 a ticket times 4.
Definitely.
It depends on your situation, but I feel like it kind of alienates some more people who were on the fence, had mixed feelings about it, and especially with, I mean, it's still September, so you're 3 months away, but I mean, if it's coming to Disney Plus December 4th and I wasn't completely like dying to see this, I'm fine waiting 3 months, you know?
Yeah, and that's so weird to me too. It's like, why
did
they
should not have announced that until
why would you announce
the first
that,
week
right?
or so? Yeah.
Even at that point, was it to kind of help with some of the backlash they received?
They did the same thing with Onward because obviously that had come out in theaters, and then they did the like paid VOD where you could get it on Amazon or YouTube or iTunes, whatever
for like $20
platform you wanted, for $20. And then at the same, like, while that was still happening, they were like, oh, but by the way, it's going to be on Disney Plus in like 2 weeks. And so, like, I mean, I had seen it in theaters.
Yeah,
but
why do they do that?
Rebecca was like, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait until then.
Yeah.
So
I don't get what the reasoning is there. Again, I think, is it partly to help with the backlash for the pricing, or is it because even at that point, though, I mean, the pricing is what it is. You know, why not make people happier later on after you've already kind of gotten what you can financially, and then say, hey, everyone, it's going to be free, and like anyone can watch it in, you know, a couple months or something like that, or in a couple weeks, depending on what the situation is. I don't know. It's just weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not intelligent from where I'm standing, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like if they had done, especially because sort of the precedent had already been set here in this last 3 months, 4 months of the movies coming out straight to VOD, where it was that $19.99 rental period.
Yeah,
and with this being okay, that was $20 to rent it, but now they're like, okay, well, it's $29.99. You can watch it as much as you want. But it's like, yes, I can watch it as much as I want starting December 4th when it's on Disney Plus. So, I mean, I feel like they should have just kept it simple with that $20 number, and that probably would have, you may have made less money per sale, but you probably would have made more sales, because $30 is just, it sounds like a whole lot more than 20, at least to me, someone who's not rolling in cash right now.
30 is a big jump, I think. You know, it's especially, I mean, we're literally in a pandemic. We're in one of the worst economic crises since 10 years ago. but
also when you couple there's not much of a high rewatchability factor for me here with this one.
Well, it's a remake to begin with,
right? So
this isn't the next MCU movie or some
it's
big event everyone's been looking forward to,
or just something that like is of the highest quality, like you're talking about with I'm Thinking of Ending Things, where it's like I want to rewatch this and catch all the details or something. Like, it's not like, okay, I paid $30, now I'm gonna get my money's worth by watching this 3 times before December 4th.
Right, exactly. So, I mean,
questionable decisions all around.
Yeah, and it's just a mess. And I understand why everyone's frustrated. I understand where everyone's coming from. And it definitely, you know, you try to separate the art and the film itself from how you feel about everything else that's going on. But at the same time, it kind of makes it hard. Like, if you're watching it and you're like, geez, like, this is not, like, it's not as good as it could be, or it's not like what I hoped it would be, and you've just paid $30 for it. I mean, that probably can't help but like inform how harsh you might feel about it, or you know.
Yeah, I feel like I would have been unsatisfied if I had paid. I mean, even more unsatisfied if I had
exactly.
Paid. But again, let's get into some more specifics here about the actual film itself, so that we can, because I keep saying I'm unsatisfied, but it wasn't all bad.
Why are you so unsatisfied?
56 out of 100 from me. So higher than I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Still not great though. Somewhat middle of the pack.
Definitely not great.
But I mean, this movie, I think, before we get into some of the questions that you may have for me, I'll just give a little general thoughts here. I thought this movie was it was entertaining, but it wasn't great. Like I said previously, it's not super rewatchable. The idea of the reboot, changing it up, they handled it well, I guess, of making it almost more adult. This is a PG-13 movie. It blended tones. The tonal shifts were kind of all over the place. I don't know. Well, let's just you toss me some questions so that this is more interactive and not what we tried to avoid earlier.
Okay, so one of the things that you kind of led with in your review was you were talking about how at this point we've seen so many Disney remakes.
Correct.
It's getting kind of harder and harder to kind of distinguish or like get people excited about them when we're getting the same thing over and over. But you talk about there's kind of 3 different versions we've seen, and I agree with how you kind of classified them. So you have like a carbon copy of the original, like shot for shot, same like tone and aesthetic. And that's The Lion King. That would be an example of that, which we got last year.
For sure.
And then you have something that has like slighter variations, but is generally the same and maybe some changes here and there, but it retains all the same stuff. So like Aladdin or Dumbo, which again were last year as well, which is insane. And I had not even...
There were 3 last year.
There were 3 last year in the span of like 6 months. And then you have like a stronger reimagining that kind of jettisons some of the key elements that made the original a fan favorite, which would be, I think this is really the first example of that with Mulan, where you don't have the songs, you don't have Mushu, the animated, like animal characters necessarily. So how did you feel about Mulan in that kind of context? And then B, with Disney remakes going forward, which do you want to see like a more of out of those 3 kind of categories?
Okay, so that to answer the first question, I like going in, I was very excited about this because of those movies that you've talked about before, because of the fact that The Lion King was shot for shot the exact same and not as good, or that Aladdin, that was like more entertaining. They added some new characters, added some new sequences. Like those were some of the best parts of that. That like, yes, you have this great core concept that we all know and love, but if you're doing a whole new version of it, if you're doing it in a new medium, being live action versus animated, like explore a little bit, take a little creative liberties and change stuff. And that's definitely what they did here, taking out the musical numbers, which, I mean, that hurts just because of how great the songs are in this, like Reflection, I'll Make a Man Out of You. Those are some all-time classics from Disney, but they were able to incorporate the like themes and motifs into the underscore. So that wasn't super bad, but I mean, just in general, this, like I said, PG-13, this is a martial arts, like wuxia film, like you were talking about, that has some pretty intense stunts, some epic action sequences, I would say, but they really went for it. They like put it out there, and I respect that. I appreciate that it's giving giving audiences something new. I mean, like I said, you still have that base woman replacing father in military, like that's the base premise, but it's like, okay, well, the way we get from point A to point B is going to be different than how it was in the movie, in the animated movie. So I appreciated all of that. I liked that they did that. But then to that second question about which I'd like to see more of, I mean, I think it depends. I think the best route is to do the sort of middle ground, like we talked about with Aladdin, but maybe like slightly more than Aladdin. So it's like, you've got your basic storyline and you're experimenting, but you're not changing everything. You're not copying everything. So like we've talked about, they're doing a live action Hercules that's going to come. I think it depends on your source material. Yeah. What the story, like the origin itself is. I mean, if you're talking, I know this is pre you, but Jake and I talked a lot about like what we'd like to see, which properties, like, and he's big on Treasure Planet. That's like an animated one where it's not super well known. I think when it's something as beloved as a Hercules, you have to kind of stick to you can't take the music out. You can't change this or that. But like if it's something that's like maybe a little more not well known, not as cemented as a classic, then sure, go experiment. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much would echo most of that. Again, as someone who is not as attached to these original animated films as I think a lot of people are, I give more leeway, and I would actually like to see maybe more differences than typical. But again, if you're going to go that route, like Mulan has tried to do, and from what I've heard and what I've seen some clips and scenes on Twitter and whatnot.
I know you're going to make fun of that final action sequence.
God, it looks so bad. Oh my God.
That was not, I know I was praising some of the action. That was not the best,
that was not
best example there.
I was like, I mean, it's one scene, one shot, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but yeah, it's just tough. It's a tough situation because you can't please everyone, and that's what you're trying to do. I think when you got to commit to a vision, you have to have a good the right writer, the right director, and then you just go and you're on it all the way, and you don't really compromise. I think Mulan did kind of compromise some instances, and it just I don't know. Again, as someone who hasn't seen it, you know, for me, it just feels like a very clunky, kind of weird, you know, not Frankenstein's monster necessarily of a adaptation or live action adaptation, but something that isn't really across the board ideal for fans of the original or people who want to see something different.
I mean, I think that leads into a great point of discussion about like some of the changes that they did make. Obviously, was the action of the movie, the violent, not necessarily violence, but talking about some of the martial arts influences. They've got the like almost people floating in the air, doing like flips, running up walls, like those kind of things that you see in like classic traditional martial arts, kung fu movies, anything like that. But I would say that this was there was a surprising amount of violence here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like there's blood or gore or anything like that. They're not slicing people in half, but there's like pretty open, like one of the opening scenes, the northern invaders come in. Basically, it reminded me, they're like surfing on their horses. They're like the Dothraki.
Oh my gosh.
Season 7 of Game of Thrones. They're like coming in hot.
Yeah.
And they like do cool stunts, run up the walls, do some flips. But they're like bow and arrow, taking out people left and right. Like body count is piling up. And I was like, okay, this is earning that PG-13 pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that for this, the way that live action remakes have been handled, the way that Disney in general like is a family property, is a kid's property, like I don't have any problem with it.
Yeah.
I like seeing that, but I feel like some people might be kind of startled or jarred by that.
Right.
And then on top of that, the fact that the tonal shift, like it goes from that in an attack to then sort of like your traditional like Disney one-liners. Like something that you'd see in like a Disney movie or an MCU movie or something, like the more kid-friendly stuff. And that it's like, that's what's jarring to me, going from spray and pray with the bow and arrow to then like, oh, let's giggle about this, or like let's make a joke about that. And so that to me, I think was something that it kept the film from really getting in a rhythm, because of just how like the tonal shifts kept going back and forth.
Right. And kind of like before we really move on, because you were just talking about the action like a good amount, it sounds pretty cool. It sounds like they did a pretty decent job. Well, based on what you've seen, I haven't seen the movie, and what I saw does not look good, but what like action movies, I mean, that's the most popular genre of film, at least, you know, worldwide. I mean, blockbusters are action films,
right?
And like the like this year in particular, you know, I saw Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn in theaters, thankfully, before COVID hit, and you know, Extraction and The Old Guard were both on Netflix this year, and very accessible, you know, pretty widely seen, supposedly, Netflix films. And then of course Tenet is in theaters as we speak, which is Christopher Nolan's biggest action film ever, supposedly. Well, you know, what does Mulan offer that's unique to the genre, especially for like a Disney-fied action film? Like, is there anything it does like especially well, or how would you compare it to some of these other movies that we've been talking about?
I mean, I think that the action in this is good for like what was expected to be. But I mean, I'm not going to put this up here with top action movies of all time, or even like of this year. Like, I mean, I've seen, of those ones you listed, I've seen all of them but Tenet, and I would say that all of those have better action than this. But it's also like a very different style of, like, I mean, you've got the Extraction and Old Guard and Birds of Prey pretty much like hand-to-hand combat, more like modernized fighting, versus this, which is more of like the action is almost, I know all fight scenes are choreographed, but this really like takes the message of like choreographing, makes it more of like the art form, the dance, that kind of battle sequence versus something that's like brute force, and that's why like I think that the wuxia influences and just those more classic traditional aspects like worked their way in. That's what made this like exciting and surprising for what they were doing, not necessarily that it's like John Wick level Chad Stahelski stunt work.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess again, that's pretty much what I expected, or like what I expected to at least hear from you based on your kind of more mixed feelings about the movie.
But I will say, hold on, I will say before you move on, I will say that for it being like marketed and described as like we're ditching the songs for battle and action, I would say that there wasn't as much action as I had expected.
Okay.
That I thought that it would be sort of like the kind of like flips and kicks and all that stuff like all the time. Not all the time, but like more than there was.
That's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, especially when that was some of like the best parts of
some of the
movie.
cooler things. Yeah.
Right.
And then, we're talking more about kind of changes, for better or for worse. One of the things I noticed when I was reading your reviews, you were talking about the dialogue in particular. Again, this is an adaptation. It's coming from an original animated children's movie, quote unquote.
Right.
And you said the dialogue in this kind of more clunky and basic. And of course, in the original, I mean, it's a beloved film. I don't think anyone really complains about the dialogue in that movie or how the characters interact. What exactly in this was different, or like, why do you think they might have changed it? Like,
I would say that it's just like, I mean, I'm like you. I believe that I haven't seen. I actually started to watch the original Mulan earlier last week to get ready for this. But then it was actually the night of the Chadwick Boseman news, so I like everything stopped.
Yeah.
But like, so I have not seen this in a long time. So I'm with you there. But like, I just feel like the characters weren't super well developed, which kind of is a shock considering, like you said, that this is a reboot. Like, you literally have the groundwork laid out in front of you. You just have to replicate it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, with Mulan herself, like, didn't the dialogue between her and her sister, or her and the other people in the army, it's all pretty like surface level, never anything like too revealing of the characters, of who they are. And then particularly one of the issues that I had was with the villain, who is a new character. It's it's Gong Li's character. I don't really remember how to say the name of the evil witch.
Right.
So we'll just refer to her as the evil witch. But she kind of has, like, she's built up the entire time of like having these supernatural abilities and teaming up with Boru Khan, who's like the version of like the Hun, the leader from the original one. But they're kind of teaming up, and she's using her powers, and then suddenly like there's a late revelation, and she goes from like being evil to being good in like a matter of 3 minutes. And there's never really any like development of like
set up for
why that happened, what that they like touch on it, they like explain it, but it just doesn't, it happens so quickly, and there's never like any sort of depth to either her or Mulan that leads to that actually happening.
Yeah, I think when you're making a big character, having a big character decision or some big moment of truth, you don't really want to have to explain it. It should just be kind of obvious, like the reasoning behind it. So you're not like, oh, wow, what?
Right. It just seemed like, okay, well, we got to have something that changes things up. We got to have her turn good somehow. Let's do this. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it just didn't really like flow and fit what we what the rest of the movie was working towards, I think.
Yeah. And then, okay, so talking about big changes and things that kind of bothered you or what have you. There's one thing I've heard about in this movie, and you, again, touched on it a little bit in your review. This is the thing that has been most surprising and, like, I think not upsetting necessarily, but just kind of like, what? Like, I don't understand the reasoning behind it. And I know, of course, this is based on an old Chinese legend, and I'm sure there's more basis for it in that. But to me, if you're adapting it in this way for a modern audience, in the original film, she didn't have any special powers or anything.
Right.
She had the interactions with her ancestors, and then of course Mushu. In in this one, I was very much under the impression from the trailers I'd seen and the marketing in general that it was basically the same. Like she was just, a girl who was trying to do the right thing and help her father and her family and go be and, serve her country. And in this, apparently she's like has superpowers and is like the chosen one, essentially. Like there's this chosen one narrative where it's almost like Frozen, where she has like these special powers and she has to hide them. And then in this story of her serving and taking over for her father, they like come out and she reveals them and is like super OP and all that. I don't know.
It's kind of like so very early on you're introduced to like, instead of Mushu and the ancestor, the dragon, all of that, it's like this Mulan's family has a history with the phoenix, obviously like the mystical creature that's reborn from the ashes, but that's kind of like takes the place of Mushu. There's never a talking phoenix or anything like that, but just kind of that like mysticism. And then there's also it's called the chi, which is like the inner spirit, the inner force that you can garner, basically like you said, superhuman abilities in battle by channeling like your inner peace, unlocking your inner skills. And so she kind of learns through her family and through her struggles how to do that. And then that kind of, it's not like she's like lifting cars or leaping mountains or stuff, but it's kind of like lets her do, it like heightens her abilities of like doing a flip over someone or something, just kind of that more artistic fighting, I guess, that I was referencing. And so I thought like definitely a twist, but I think that allowed it to have like still that sort of mysticism, sort of that you were able to get through the dragons or through the other stuff in the original, but it made it accessible in a way like this historical, because that is like, I looked it up, that is something that was like believed to be true in like ancient China. Like this was like a practice and stuff. So it like allowed some of that like ancient Chinese mysticism to work its way into the story in a more, not necessarily adult way, but just not a way that's as juvenile as an animated talking dragon, or something like that. That it walked a fine line between sort of that giving that history, but never kind of going over the top.
Do other characters have these like? Do they like use the same like abilities, or do they have?
There's so the evil witch, she has the powers she can like turn herself into a bird basically, and like fly around and stuff. So that's obviously like, I know again, don't remember super well. I know that the evil Hun he has a bird. I don't know if he turns into that bird or not in the original, but that, I mean, I know that the evil witch has those powers and she kind of can manipulate stuff, but nobody else for the most part, I don't think, has it. None of the other soldiers have that ability, or nobody else in her family does. So it's just her. So I guess, like you said, some of the like chosen one thing, that aspect kind of changes things quite a bit from the original. But I mean, just the inclusion of it as a whole, I think it worked. It wasn't ever anything that I found like detrimental to enjoying it.
I don't know. This is the last thing I'm going to add about it. For just, again, I haven't seen the film. It's just what I've heard and what you said. I am so sick and tired of like, just because, I mean, the Chosen One narrative has been around forever, basically. And in film and books and legends and all these other things, but like especially from Disney recently, it's just been like I don't know, where Star Wars is just a glaring example of it, obviously, where Rey was kind of set up as being having some sort of greater significance in the entire Star Wars universe, and then in The Last Jedi, of course, that was kind of ripped away and it was just like, you're nobody, you're not special.
Which is why The Last Jedi rocks.
You're just this person doing this thing, and that's what makes it so great. And it's kind of like it's the Chosen One narrative is good, and it's done a lot of good, and it's given us some great movies and stories and things. But I think it's cool to see some different takes on that. And I will say that was one of the aspects that I did like about The Last Jedi, and what I liked what they were doing with Rey as a character. And so to see them kind of fall back on that again, and then kind of also using that in a different framed way in Mulan, where it's not like, oh, she's just a girl who's trying to do her best, like do the right thing. It's like, no, she's special, and like no one else could do this necessarily. It has to be her. It's just kind of like, well, all right, Like,
Yeah,
I guess.
I mean, I didn't really think of it that way, but now that you say that, I totally get that. Totally see the way it's just overtired, overused, especially when it comes to Disney properties.
Yeah, because just in the last, like, I guess less than a year since The Rise of Skywalker come out, we've kind of gotten these two big female-led action adventure movies, and it'll be curious to see how they kind of go forward with that, and maybe not just Disney, of course, but different movies and franchises and stuff. So I guess that's definitely a larger issue outside of just Mulan, but it's something interesting that I was very surprised when I heard about it. So
yeah, well, that was I mean, you were able to chip in pretty well there with that discussion, having not seen the movie, so I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Instead of just having me ramble on for 30 minutes with you, just say you can just unplug, go get something to eat, come back, and I'll finish up. But that was fun to get to.
You
do
ruined
that
my
like
plan.
That was actually a pre-recorded question that you just hit a button. But again, 56 out of 100 from me. It was entertaining, nothing great, nothing spectacular. Up to you to get it at home. I mean, again, obviously dependent on financial situations. If you've got a group of kids at home that you need to entertain, do it, pull the trigger. But I mean, I can't blame you if you're like Johnny or myself, just it would only be you watching it. December 4th is not that far away. You can check it out then and come back to the podcast. So that is Mulan. That is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And that is today's episode. Thank you all for listening. As always, be sure to follow us on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, whatever you're on. We're on it too, at Inside Film Room. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review. Rate us 5 stars if you will. And we will see you next week for, what is it, Johnny? What's happening next week?
We will be talking, no doubt, about the Dune trailer. Get pumped as I am, even though that probably isn't possible, because it's happening for real after months and years of waiting.
We don't even know what we're reviewing, but that alone makes it worthwhile for you to come back and listen to the next episode. So we will see you next week. Thank you again for listening, and talk to you next time.